I'm ready. Okay, so my name is Leslie Rudkin. I am a teacher at Edison Elementary. I teach first grade dual language. I do the side in Spanish. I've been living in Gainesville for 3 years now. I've moved around quite a bit. I'm originally from Mexico, Mexico City, and then I moved to the United States. I lived in Texas, in College Station, Massachusetts, Colombia, and back in Texas.
I'm Whitney Galubinski-Vogel. I am from Gainesville. I've been a teacher at Edison Elementary in Gainesville this is my 5th year. Pretty much lived here my whole life, so I'm local.
I'm Andrea Byers. I'm a local girl. I now teach in Denton. I've been there, I'm starting my 4th year. And prior to that, I was in Gainesville for 28 years. Yes, I've been teaching this is my 32nd year. And I have taught kindergarten, pre-K, 1st grade, 2nd grade. I've taught 4th grade, and now I'm teaching 3rd grade. I've also served in the roles of interventionist and instructional coach.
My name is Israel Garcia, and I have been living in Gainesville for 2 years, but working here, this is my 6th year. I've taught kindergarten dual language, 1st grade dual language, and this year I'm teaching 4th grade dual language at Chalmers Elementary. I'm originally from Sherman, Texas, so I've commuted my first few years, and now I've been living here for like 2 years.
So we were going to speak about, I guess, how all the current events, the right kind of climate with just everything going on in the world and locally, how that's affecting us, our roles as educators, and how it's affecting maybe our students or how we want to, maybe present things to our students, or how we want to kind of maybe mold our just things that we're trying to teach them.
I think this year, more than like with everything that's going on in the world, it's made me more aware and made me more direct with my students and having them understand and empathy over other people, and having them, even since I do teach in a dual language program, I do have a lot of native Spanish speakers, so a lot of Hispanics, and since which is a two-way dual language program, we do have a lot of students mixed in there. So I try to be very intentional when I do either lessons or when we have conversations, and with the basis of being empathetic.
Also, not requiring a specific age to talk about certain issues going on in the world. I think many times we always have to hush certain conversations because we see them as disrespectful, rather than answering a question and being direct about it. We're like, no, we don't say that, or no, we don't talk about that. And I think as adults, we do it to protect somebody, but in a way we're just not talking about it. Who are we protecting? And is it better just to, find when is the time to speak about it? When should we speak about certain things? Well, if the subject comes up, I think we are, to be most purposeful is to talk about it at that moment. And I think in teaching, the teaching moments happen all throughout the day. So I can't think of a plan. So when are we going to speak about this? When are we going to talk about racism? When are we going to talk about what's going on in the world? When are we going to plan? We're going to do a lesson plan about it. No, we need to be purposeful as to, if the question comes up in the classroom, let's talk about it together. What is the correct age? I think as young as, they're seeing things that are happening right now. So, what is the perfect age? What do you say? What's the perfect age? When have you reached maturity?
And when you have a mixture of students who come into your classroom, I know that being an African-American teacher, I know like on the first day of school this year, I had a little boy come up, and he was a Hispanic little boy, but he also had a SPED background. And he looked at me, and they introduced him to me, and he said, "You're black." And I said, "Well, yes, I am." You're not a Mexican? And I said, "No, I'm African-American." And, at that time, you do have to pick up on those discussions. And even last week, I had another student, a Caucasian student, who was upset because two little girls were talking about, she's black, and he was trying to defend me and told me they're saying things that are inappropriate about you. And I said, well, what do you think is inappropriate? And he said that they said that you're black. And I said, well, we picked up a black crayon and then we picked up a brown crayon and we discussed it. And I finally said, I thank you for defending me, but this time they're right and that's not inappropriate. Mm-hmm. And then we had to go over the issues of Caucasian. And there are a lot of students who don't know what that word means. So they know what the word Hispanic means, they know what African American means, but they didn't know what the word Caucasian meant. And when they asked, I said it just means the white race. So there are times when you have to have those discussions, but you still feel kind of nervous of what they will go home and say. And I kind of wonder how many people feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, that's probably one of my, like I said, I try to be intentional, and when the conversations come up, I try to speak to that, but that's always in the back of my mind. I'm like, all of these kids come from different backgrounds. All of these kids have parents who have instilled different things in them. And I feel like they do need to learn about different viewpoints, but that's always on the back of my mind as well. It's like, okay, what if we get a parent that is offended because my viewpoint is not their viewpoint, and I'm teaching their kid this? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yes, and also, when talking about that, when you want to do certain activities, or what's the correct language the students should use, how to approach it, we talked about it, and we've even brought that conversation about colorism within the Hispanic community. And I talk about this now because I've always saw myself as a, maybe not a white person, but a Mexican, and it's like, no, Leslie, look at the color of your skin. Mm-hmm. So we talked about the colorism and how within students, certain words, when they want to describe a black student, a black person, they say moreno, which in Spanish, moreno means brown. Mm-hmm. So it's teaching the language, and the way you say it is negro, es blanco, es moreno. So there's nothing wrong with it. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with it. It's that stigma that it's negative because we've put that negative on it. We try to be very purposeful, and even now when teaching, what are we showing? What are the books we're showing our students? In Colombia, they have the Afro-Colombianos, and when I was teaching there, I found a lot of resources or things like that. And it was very purposeful. There was a story about, it's a cartoon, I teach first graders. There's a story about a girl who wanted to have her hair straight, very straight, because that was beautiful. That was seen as beautiful. And it teaches a lesson, whenever she tried to get it straight, it would get messy again. And then she would get it straight again. Oh, you're pretty now, because she wanted to be a singer. And then she would go play and it would get crazy. And it would hurt to fix it. And then at the end, it's like, your hair is so beautiful. Why are you trying to change your hair when it's beautiful? So also being purposeful as to what we're teaching, what I'm presenting to the students, where is the diversity? Mm-hmm. Because that's also one thing, when I taught in Massachusetts, there was so much, diversity where I worked at. There was mostly the Puerto Rican community, the Boricuas, and I was the only Mexican at that school. But we saw a lot of diversity, people from all over the world. So also, let's bring that diversity here, even though it's a small town. How can we bring that diversity here? Let's talk about it. Let's be more purposeful. And I'm still learning. I'm not saying, I'm still learning, and I'm still catching myself doing certain things that, that I need to, unpack myself and look at myself first in order to be a better teacher of all my students. Mm-hmm.
I think for like another kind of aspect of it for me is just where maybe not even towards students directly, but it kind of can create conversations within just amongst ourselves, amongst our peers. And so my friend Natalie over there in the next group had asked me over the summer if I would help teach a class on equity to I guess just to other teachers in Gainesville. And I mean I really didn't, I was kind of in over my head, and I didn't really know much about equity at the time. If you had asked me, I was like, yeah, I know what that word means. And then really I'm like, well, no, I guess I really don't know what it means, compared to equality. And so she taught me a lot, but it provided a really, by teaching that class and kind of like diving into it, I'm no expert on this, obviously, but I feel a responsibility to educate myself and to seek out resources and, read the books and read the article, whatever it is, anything I can do to educate myself so that I'm prepared if there's something comes up in a conversation. I mean, we were in one of our trainings before school started, and there was a teacher that had made it wasn't inappropriate, but just kind of a comment that it gave a chance to be like, well, actually, maybe just because this person wears these certain clothes, it doesn't mean, and it led to a really, I don't know, I was really, my jaw kind of dropped at how well the conversation went, that, maybe before I hadn't, prepped myself, had I not prepped myself with just, the resources and the tools to know what to say, I probably would have been like, ooh, this is awkward, and kind of just let it move on. But instead I was like, no, you don't get to say something like that and not get addressed, and I did it in a gentle way, but I think being assertive and like being direct in situations like with our peers and with, with one another is really important, because, what the student body that we have that we're in charge of is a diverse group of kids. And if we're not purposeful and being inclusive and, having representation for each different kind of student in our resources and materials and the music we play in class, and, I'm in PE, so I play different kinds of music, whatever, the books that we have. I just think that this also provides a really good, it's a good time right now to have these conversations with one another, which, a lot of us have been doing, but we need to, continue, I feel like.
I agree. I know you mentioned something about like talking to other people about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know in education we're all about growth mindset, and a lot of coworkers that we might know are thinking one way and just don't want to think of anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we take it that route with growth mindset, it's not about just what I know is right. It's what you have to always change with the more experiences that other people have.
Yeah.
You have to take that in, like your feeling, other people's feelings are right. I mean,
they're very valid.
They're valid.
Yeah.
That's what it is. People's feelings are valid, and you have to take that in and learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is true, because when you're using examples, I know in this, we're working in an environment or in a culture now, or climate now, that is very unusual for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I work at a school that's highly diverse. And one of the things I'm learning now is that the school never taught multiculturalism. I'm sure the teachers taught it within themselves, but, when I came last year, I said, we have a variety of students here, and we need to be honoring them. And I think the principal said we just never thought of it before. So we started a multicultural community, and then COVID came along.
Yeah.
And then they called me in last week and said we needed to do something. Well, one of the questions I'm getting now is, I don't know, because I'm going back to what you said about Massachusetts, and you have, I'm talking to the Hispanic culture, and they say, oh, we're not Hispanic. We're from Puerto Rico, or we're Venezuelan, and I've had to have a different mindset and go back and think and do some rereading and some learning myself to understand what is the difference between all these cultures, and how do we portray that to our students. So, I mean, we're trying to do that, and I'm learning and growing from that as well.
I think one thing specifically this year, because every year around this time we usually have like our Hispanic Heritage Night, and we have that party and stuff. And because of COVID, that wasn't going to be able to happen. So I know specifically at Chalmers, we got together and we were thinking about what can we do to, not just celebrate Hispanic heritage culture, but every culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I got with my team and we're like, what? I mean, what does this all stem from? Like, what the culture? Where is that? That's a part of your identity. That's a part of who you are. So we actually decided to do, an identity project. Like, where are your roots from? What does your name mean? Where did your family come from? Who is your family?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would be a great idea to stem from to know oneself is to express everybody else. I mean, it's not express everybody else, but to know oneself and get everybody else to know who you are as a person. That will hopefully sprout acceptance.
And also, how there's a reason how you get to lean on, you get to be with the people that share your same experiences. That's what also we talked about, being Hispanic, being immigrants, moving, you tend to get closer to the people, that you connect to. And so we also talked about, we're also learning, we're making mistakes. We're trying to not be defensive. That's also very important. We talked about intentions, no one's intention is to hurt somebody, but then we do. But then we don't, it's like, I'm sorry you're hurt. But so I think acknowledging how, we have different cultures and we can learn too, Venezuela is not Mexico, or in not be defensive about it. Also listening, but also being ready to educate. And I know it's hard. And I speak, I have no idea, what Black women go through every day. And then having to explain and having to justify and having to teach and being patient and not being angry. Come on.
Right.
We're going to be angry. And sometimes we cause that anger. So I think I'm listening. I still think, we all need to listen. But I feel like if I can help by, talking to, we talked about talking to our own family. We break those lots of conversations that, we can't say this because, Leslie's at the table, or we're not allowed to say this because this is going on. And we talked about strong language, that it's used in our community,
Right.
and it goes back to the slavery. We talked about certain language that is still being used in Spanish, that is negative, but is used as regular language. So saying, hey, that's not okay because of this. And even though people might say, we can't say this because Leslie's right here, and it's just gonna,
this thing,
it's gonna start. We can't do this. We can't say this. And so it's those things like, Puerto Ricans. They're lazy. They don't like to work, and they're here. They're here legally. But with the book, we learned, about all the different struggles. Also having their roots taken away. Like the Mexican American community at first, when they don't speak English. When they don't speak Spanish, it's because their language was taken away. So connecting with that, and also, I don't know if I'm driving the conversation everywhere, not comparing struggles against struggles. I think that's one of our big problems. We're always comparing the struggle, but what about me? What about our struggle? What about our community? And we see a lot of negative portrayals of Black people against Mexican people. And we're doing this back and forth. And where is that going? As families with your children, what are they seeing? So
Or
the bad kid.
Or what are they hearing?
What are
Because
they
a lot
hearing?
of the views that the kids are bringing into the schools are views that their parents have. So, and you see this every day. You could use, we were talking about titles, and I said president, and then wrote the name, and the first thing out of their mouth is, I hate, or, that's not a nice thing to say. And, he is our president, and we should honor him and give him the respect that he deserves because he is our president, no matter how you feel at home. But, you go back to, are you stepping on toes, or when you take the kids to write outside with chalk, and the first thing they write, you have a group here, Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, and then the kids are getting into the discussion and say, that there's a point where you have to stop and say, boys and girls, we can't talk about that, or without instilling your own views in that. But a lot of what they hear, they're bringing from home. So they're hearing parents talk about it, or they're hearing other adults talk about it, and it's up to us to make sure that we have the books and the resources and we're discussing these things, but you can't change what they're learning at home.
What they're learning.
Because, we have no control over that.
You don't. Also, within the school, we try to be, purposeful also, but there are some things where you're like, I don't know how to help you with this because there's no representation.
Right.
There's no representation. Let's see, why isn't there, more diversity? you know,
Within the
we
teachers,
within the we don't
the
have,
school.
you know, at our school, we talked about it. We've talked about this often because that's what impacted
yeah,
a lot. You know,
yeah.
I know Israel, his experience. I don't even want to talk about it here.
So a lot of what stemmed my research and trying to listen and understand people who are different stemmed from actually an experience that I had with a student. A little black girl, she actually came up, she told her mom, and the mom had a conversation with the teacher, and that teacher told me that she was very upset because she didn't see anybody in the school that looked like her. And me, one of the biggest reasons I'm here as a teacher, as an educator, I'm like, you know, bringing diversity, a male teacher into this education system, and Hispanic male speaking Spanish. So I'm like, okay, I felt like I was trying to do my part in trying to include a certain group, but I thought it was like everybody. See, because everybody can learn from the diversity of just one person, right? But then I started, like, my mindset is shifted. I'm like, but I'm not included a whole different other culture. We need more diversity within our teachers. We need more. I need to celebrate her culture because obviously she doesn't feel valued.
Mm-hmm.
She does not feel valued. She doesn't feel she's important. So that kind of just stemmed I'm going to learn, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to celebrate who they are. And that's kind of what started my journey in understanding and listening to people.
Well, and I know we've had us three have had this conversation before, but you know how it's important for students of color to see, you know, themselves, you know, representation, see people that look like them, and see whether it's teachers or whether we just, you know, teach them about, you know, people like pioneers in different fields, like scientists or doctors or whatever it is, you know, like people that they can look up to that have accomplished things. I think it's really important for the students of color to see that. But then the conversation that we had was how it's just as important, or you know, it's very important also for the white students to see black people
Mm-hmm.
and brown people and all different cultures. I think like that's not something that, I mean, it's a new trending thing now to like, you know, let your kids have different baby dolls or whatever, you know. But I mean, I think it's really important for us to show the white kids that they're, you know, can be heroes and very, you know, people that can accomplish amazing things from all different backgrounds and colors. And I don't know. I don't think I really had that growing up. I don't think I really had that in my education. I mean, I don't think that I was presented with, you know, heroes and heroines of different races. It was always, you know, just people that looked like me. And so I just think it's really important for, like I said, for like the white kids like me growing up in an all white school to see that it's not just white people that are, you know, able to, even though that, you know, maybe it didn't come out and say it, that only white people can do this. That's all it was presented to me. So why would I have thought any differently that, so then, you know, whenever I did see maybe someone of color that was in a, you know, a high role, it was like wow, like that's different. That's not or it's like I don't know, like a rare thing. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be like, oh man, a black person actually accomplished something. Like, no, we shouldn't, like that shouldn't be what the assumption is. It should be just the normal, I feel like, that we're all presented with, not, you know, not just for the kids that are not white.
And it's really important, and it's hard to do in a small town situations, because I know for years, I mean, we all know that we have one Hispanic teacher or two African Americans in the whole district, and that's what they saw. Because even when my nephew left Gainesville and went to school in another district, and all of a sudden he would see African Americans in these prominent positions, or driving Lexuses and BMWs, and thinking, oh, they're rich. Well, they're not. They work hard for a living just like all the rest of us. And you know, you had to tell him that, you know, being from Gainesville, you may not see that, but that's why I look for ways, even though I've moved, I look for ways that we need to make sure that we keep some of these strong adult role models who come back, and how do you get them to stay in Gainesville so that people can see what they're doing and they can look up to them. Mm-hmm. I mean, what do we need to do? Because even in schools in Denton ISD, there are schools where you have children of color who are not represented well. They can't look up and see those adults in those roles. But I do. I feel like you do, Whitney, that children need to be able to see that.
Mhm.
It needs to be represented well.
Oh,
I was saying the standards also, like what we expect from students. We're not setting those standards high because we're like, oh
Right.
no, he's not. And we cannot just say, well, look at Oprah. Look, and see, she did it. You can do it too. But am I giving you the tools to get that far when my expectations are here? We talked about it with ESL students. They've been in the program for years and years, and their work is easier. It's less because no, he can't do it. It's a language thing. He can't do it. Or they're not gonna go. They're not gonna go far. They struggle a lot. So my expectations are here, and we talked about it even at the equity training. How our expectations need to be high. And when people say, "Well, they did it," look at if they were presentable, it's how you represent yourself. And we're like, no, that was we talked about it also about representation of your own
yeah.
it's your own fault.
And
the way
at
you
some point,
represent
that's
yourself.
okay. But when you're looking at Oprah, those are people that they see on TV. They need to be able to know that Leslie can do that. I can do it. Or Israel's doing that, or I can do it. Whitney's doing that, or Andrea's doing that, and I know her personally. If she can do it, I can do it. So we need to make sure that we're still encouraging them, and that it's somebody that they personally know,
Right.
and make sure that those that we're instilling high expectations in those students.
Yes, of all students.
And that makes
All
it like
students.
realistic and more tangible. I feel like whenever it's someone that they can actually high five, like, all right, that's real. Like, I know this person, I can do that.
I feel also we look, sometimes a lot at celebrities. I learned one thing, there's still celebrities that I follow, but, social media has also been very good too. We talked about it, who I follow, the famous, the rich and the famous that you follow, or this trainer. And now I'm just, activists, people that are teaching me about, the ableism, or things that I said that we talked about learning so many different things that using certain words to describe something, to describe somebody's crazy or OCD, or we talked about how everything was so broad that I'm getting more from people, that are, here next to me, close to me. And also, the young people. Yeah. I know sometimes adults or older teachers, that have been here, giving that power, is not as comfortable. But we've had, new teachers and very young with this, when I see people speaking up and walking, at the courthouse and seeing the young crowd, that's hopeful. For me personally, I see it as hopeful. It's not as, oh no, the troublemakers. No, that's hopeful.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to with the comments that you ladies made about, like, when students finally go out of Gainesville or move out, and they're like, they see a person of color being successful. I think it all stems from, like, everything that is, whether it's media, whether we see it in the schools, or they misrepresentation within the schools. Like, the standard is a person who is successful, who has money, who is successful all over, is a person a white person. And I feel like that's why representation is so important, because it takes that subconscious thing away. It takes that away, because I remember I was listening to a podcast, or maybe I was watching a video about a Hispanic person who grew up poor, who grew up in not the best part of town or whatever, and then he started working, he became successful, and he got a great vehicle, and he would still go to his neighborhood or whatever, and I was like, oh, look at that, you got that BMW, you got that white people money, you got this money. And I'm like, see, and that's kind of like, I'm like, what is the standard? Like, we equate success into a color, and it shouldn't be like that.
That's true.
I mean, I think back to even in like, I mean, I can't think of a specific person or example, but like in high school or college, if, my group of friends, maybe there was whoever it was at the time was like going to bring a friend, and it was like a black friend. And I went to an all-white school. I was not around black people or brown people really until college, but like somebody would bring a friend and it'd be like a black person, and they'd be like, oh, but don't worry. Like, he's like, he's basically a white person, or she acts like a white girl, or whatever it is. And that was just like, these are things that were just very normal to me, that I don't know if kids still say that, because it's been a long time since I graduated now, I feel like. But I mean, those weren't things that, I didn't really even like think twice, because that was just like, oh, but don't worry, he's not like black, or whatever. And it's like, what does that even mean? Like, why do you, I don't know, like, I think back to all these things that were just normal to me back whenever my worldview was this big, coming from a tiny, small school. And then my worldview is, I mean, like I said, I'm still learning. I am not an expert. I don't know what I'm talking about half the time, but I'm trying, I'm trying to listen and just, I don't know. I just feel like my role is to kind of listen and be an ally and speak up when I need to. But I don't know, just my worldview has, exploded from what it was coming out of Lindsay High School at age 18, But I mean, if these are things that, well, myself specifically, that is why I chose to pull my son out of school there. I mean, I went there, he went there. This is nothing negative about the school. Like, I love people that go there, and work there. But I just wanted him, before I was a teacher, I would substitute there. And I heard some comments made by kids, as young as 7th graders, and I know it was younger, just the comments that were made, and I don't know, it just made me really kind of think, like, you know what, that's probably how I, it was nothing, abnormal to me when I was a kid, but I want this kind of language and this kind of things to not be normal to my son. So I pulled him out of Lindsay, put him in Gainesville, and I just wanted to be purposeful about making sure that he, was around, kids that didn't all look like him. And I wanted him to be around diversity and around, I wanted him to come out with a bigger worldview than I had, where it wouldn't take him until he was, 28 to really start to open up and see, become more empathetic and see, like, just things from different points of view. So, maybe, the kids we teach, like, at our campus are little bitties. But I also think about, as a mother, and as a mother of a child who's a high school student here in Gainesville, I want him to go into school and to be aware and to be an ally and to be, sometimes he'll text me and be like, oh my gosh, someone said this, or I saw this on a bumper sticker. This is terrible, and it doesn't makes me proud. I don't expect him to make a scene, but I'm like, wow, like he listens and he understands, like, what things are wrong, and he understands what things are, in my opinion, things that are right or whatever. So,
and I commend you for that, because as dark as my skin is, I was one of those that was labeled the white black girl.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother made sure that all of us, we went to the swimming lessons and the bowling lessons, and every lesson that you could take, she put us in it, because she always told us that you're not going to feel like you're inferior to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And but there comes a point when you have to fit in, and the fact that I was working at a school where I was the only African American teacher, I decided to go to a church that was predominantly Caucasian. I'd have my own brother calling me Miss White Girl.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just how it was. And it got to the point where I just knew to stand in my place.
Right.
There's a place for me, and that's where I stay, and you don't speak up unless someone asks you to. And not that I wouldn't speak up for things that were not right, but
right.
And then when I left Gainesville, because we all know that it's pretty much conservative here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when I went to Denton, I worked with teachers who had open tattoos, or they're chose to be from the gay community, and I'd tell my sister, they're just open about it. In Gainesville, you'd really get in trouble about that. It was just one of those things where even I was thrown into a different world and different culture. Mm. And she said, well, what can they do about it? That's their lives. So even as adults, we experienced that. And then I knew that I had gone from a predominantly Republican place to a Democrat. And they spoke openly about it and worked around Democrats, atheists, and it's a shock getting used to that.
Mhm.
So at that point, I knew that I had to do something different with my students. I mean, if I'm feeling that way, and what was I, 50 at the time? I know that they're feeling some type of way too.
I think it's important to be around different people because
Mhm.
I have noticed that, like, I have my own beliefs on, I am a Christian and I'm all this, and I didn't grow up Christian, um, but I feel like it's very, very important to be around different people of different walks of life because that creates empathy, that creates understanding, that creates just like, okay, I understand you, and I think it's over everything. I think it's important to have conversations like these. Important to and not just conversating, just trying to tell your viewpoint, but with the intent to listen to each other. And I think I think it's very important to have a diverse group of people around you who don't see things the way you do. That way, maybe you can learn from each other.
There's a quote, and I'm sure there's like a longer lead up to it, but the last part, it's Michelle Obama said it, and I just remember seeing it, and it just like really stuck with me. But it just says it's hard to hate up close, and it's just so, I don't know, it's just like it's so simple, but it's so like big also, and what it means. And I mean, it goes exactly what you just said. Like if you surround yourself with people that are from different walks of life and different backgrounds, and then you're just like, once you get to know them, be like, oh man, like a gay person isn't scary, or like, oh, a black person isn't scary, or a brown person isn't scary, whatever it is, or they're not bad, they're not evil. You're like, they're just people. They're really nice. This person's really awesome. Like we're going to Starbucks later, whatever. Just you can't hate people once you get to know them and up close. I don't know. I just think again, like being purposeful, like you said about surrounding
And that's
yourself.
when we go back and we look at ourselves and our personal children and our children in our classroom. We have to tell them you have to look on the inside and not the outside.
Yes.
Mm.
And we don't always have to change people. I think sometimes, somebody doesn't have the same beliefs as you, or they don't attend the same church, or they don't believe in the same God you do. I feel like sometimes we're like, no, we're trying to, you're here in my path for a reason, so I have to help you change.
Mhm.
And some just love a person the way they are, get to know them. We don't necessarily need to change anybody. We need to change ourselves.
Mhm.
That's something, we feel the savior complex.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna help you, but I'm like, maybe they don't want your help.
Yeah.
They want your friendship. They want it. So I think also we don't need to change anybody. Also love somebody the way they are. Accept them. Whether the religious beliefs. There's their sexual orientation. The things they like to do, or maybe you don't agree with many things, but hey, we can, be together, be friends. But we also talked about it, racism can be one of them. Certain things that you can also compromise, and also who you're trying to change. It's not your duty to change somebody. And because I know we have Whitney, I've seen her, defend so many things. And I'm like, I don't know where she finds that. I don't know where she finds those words or the courage to be so diplomatic and not being like, boom.
And we'll fight tooth and nail.
Yeah, in the diplomatic way. And sometimes I'm like, well, that's good. But sometimes to what point are you going to,
Right.
don't let it take over you. But I'm like, wow, I need to learn from, at least I'm like writing things down too.
And so now when people are coming to me for advice about certain behaviors that they see in some of the students, I tell them, one of the things, I don't know who said it, but one of the things I tell them is that, it's okay for us to feel empathetic, but we can't be sympathetic about what's going on.